say I'm Peggy McKee. I'm a research associate at the Margaret Chase Smith Policy Center, and I manage the Maine government summer internship program. And I'm really happy you could all join us this afternoon. We have our guests today are Reggie Parson. Hi, Reggie.
Hi.
Reggie is the Senior Legislative Aide and Policy Analyst in the Office of the Speaker of the House in Augusta in Maine government, and Heather Priest, who hopefully will be joining us in a moment, is the Chief of Staff in the Senate Republican office in the Maine State Senate. And we're grateful that they're able to join us today. We want to learn a little bit about their jobs, their background, a little bit about Reggie, sort of how you got to where you are and why, and then a little bit about what your job actually entails. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke with two legislators, and they told us a bit about, their path to their current job and to the legislature and some of what their work entails. And so we're doing, in addition to information, we're doing a little career exploration of like, what would it be to work, to work as a legislator? What would it be to work as legislative staff? And, it's a little bit of a lesser known career. So if you wouldn't mind just sort of starting us off, introduce yourself and tell us a bit about where you are and how you got there.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I know it's lunchtime, so I don't want to take too long, and I hope that Heather is able to join us at some point. But my name is, as Peggy said, Reggie Parson, Senior Legislative Aide and Policy Analyst for the Speaker of the House. The current Speaker of the House right now is Ryan Fecteau. He represents part of the city of Biddeford. I have been on the legislative staff in the Speaker's office since September of 2019. So I started on when Sarah Gideon was Speaker, and then carried on into the new Speaker. So basically my job entails it's really divided into thirds. So a third of my job is policy work. I cover 5 specific policy issues in our office. So I cover issues on criminal justice to healthcare, marine resources, inland fisheries and wildlife, and state and local government. So you can imagine when the legislature is in session, it is a very busy time because part of my job is monitoring all 5 of those committees to follow what's going on in terms of legislation and flagging bills that could potentially have some issues for whatever reason. And obviously during the legislative session, when they're all in the House and Senate, it becomes an even busier time for me and legislative staff, because you're kind of triaging things as they kind of come on the fly. So it's a very exciting time, and it's a not boring time. So, and then the other third of my job deals with constituent work. So as probably all of you know, constituent work is a very important part of being a representative or being an elected official. So, I'm in most cases kind of the frontline person to constituent emails and phone calls and individuals having specific issues about bills or wanting the speaker to do this or that, and kind of being that bridge between both the elected and the constituent. So that is also a very fun job because you really don't know who's going to be on the phone or what emails you get. Especially this legislative session, the speaker has gotten a lot of emails on various issues that people are passionate about. So you want to make sure that those responses get out there to constituents. And then the other third of my job deals with boards and commissions. So we have a lot of boards and commissions in the state doing a lot of different things. And part of my job is coordinating the appointments. So the speaker, whoever's the speaker, typically has slots that need to be filled by various constituencies. And so if there's interest by someone to serve on a commission or committee, I help coordinate that process. And so there's never really a time where things are completely dull. I mean, right now I'm sitting in the speaker's office and it's a quiet time, but it won't be that way July 19th because they'll be all back. And how I got here essentially was through really meeting a lot of people who were in state government or close to government in general. And I came here from away, if you want to use that term, came from Wisconsin, where I went to school there, undergrad and graduate school, and came to Maine in 2016. And I knew I wanted to work in government. And so obviously started out as an intern for the city of Portland, which is where I live. And throughout law school, I just connected with the right people. And there was an opening the same year I graduated law school and applied and I was fortunate enough to get the job. So really, it kind of always boils down to, not only talents and skills, but how you network. And that's, essentially my story and how I got here and what I do. So I'm really happy to be here.
See, I told you I don't Zoom very often. I unmute myself. Thank you, Reggie. So let me just interject here. For interns, when you want to ask a question, you can either just speak up or you can put your question in the chat and I'll read it out, whichever way you're more comfortable with. So I have a question for you, Reggie. Can you give us maybe a more specific example of constituent work? Can people just call you directly, or do they call the speaker for any concern they have, or where are the bounds and how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. It varies. In general, where the process begins is someone calls the office. So the number's public. So it's not a hard number to find. And constituents want to talk to the speaker. There's so many issues. Maybe, okay, I'll point to one. So the governor's emergency powers. That obviously was a situation that, the executive had to make a lot of difficult decisions, and I'm dating it back to last year. So, I think at that time when she enacted all of those orders, a lot of constituents, for legitimate reasons, were worried about what's going to happen to my business. Can I go to the store? What's with these face coverings and face masks? And so typically they call the office, and then I got the flag that this constituent wants to talk to the speaker about face coverings. Like, what does this executive order mean? Many of the issues are complicated. So obviously everyone has complicated lives. And so putting in a face mask policy for the whole state obviously was not a one-size-fit-all approach. And so having conversations with that constituent and seeing if we can maybe connect them with a state agency that is interpreting that executive order, like the Department of Economic and Community Development, or, if it's DHHS related, connecting them to that agency. And, sometimes the conversations are pleasant, sometimes they're not. And you just kind of take it for what it is. So yeah, that would be an example of a constituent kind of matter. And then
how far do you follow that through?
Yeah. In many cases, sometimes I followed it. I'm dating my experience back to last year because there was so much happening. It would depend on the issue. So if I connected this person to a state agency, there's no really formal mechanism. Like, I don't have to ask someone to sign a waiver or anything like that to get that issue over. So many times if I connect with the constituent services person for that state agency, let's just say DHHS, which I do often anyway. I'm able to give that information, let it sit, let the department figure it out. And sometimes the constituent will call us back because maybe nothing has happened on their end. And I have to go back and follow up to say, hey, this constituent reached out again. If you can provide an update, either let me know or let the constituent know. And it actually happened not too long ago. So I sometimes follow it, but many times once I hand it off to the state agency, it probably gets taken care of. I hope it gets taken care of, but my role is very limited unless there's something unique where I have to track it. So.
Okay. I'm gonna, let's see. I have a message in the chat. I'm gonna read this question for you.
Yeah.
Were you networking mostly during law school? And could you talk a little bit more about what that looked like while you were in school, the networking?
Yeah.
Yes. And did you go to Maine Law?
Yep. So the answer is yes and yes. When I first got here to Maine in 2016, obviously being a law student is not easy. Sometimes it's not fun, but in order for you to really kind of figure out what it is you want to do. And like I said, I knew I wanted to work in government. So I intentionally kind of carved out time either while I was during the day in school or in my off time, just finding the right individuals who worked in certain places. So, I applied for an internship in Shelley Pingree office. I didn't get it because I think they were, not because I wasn't qualified, but they were looking for college students. But that set up the network for me to build a relationship with the person I was talking to. And I kept that relationship going, which he was in part the individual that led me to knowing about this job. So, no matter what, if you're in college, undergrad, or graduate school, it's important to carve out time to really connect with people in places you want to go, or at least you have a lot of interest in going. And doing a email, like a cold call or a email out of the blue. I know it sometimes may throw people off. Like, who is this person? Why are they emailing me? What is it? But if you kind of explain your situation, why you contacted them, in good chances that they'll follow up with you. And so, yeah, so it was really, I made it kind of a job amongst being in law school, and it really didn't take much time, just a lot of persistence and a little bit of research, because Maine is a small state, as you all know. So, and yes, I went to Maine Law, so I spent 3 years there in that round building.
Do you have a story on why you were interested in government, or did you know that from undergrad?
Yeah, it kind of really goes before that. I think I even knew as a kid that I wanted to work in government. I remember, obviously being a kid, watching cartoons and all that stuff, but I was particularly always focused on the news, and I was always focused on because I was born and raised in Chicago, so that's a big city, and the politics obviously can make the national news, and so I was drawn to government and situations where it appears you can make a big impact on people. So that it really kind of started childhood, and I kind of just have carried that in the back of my head as I've done undergraduate, graduate school, law school, internships, whatever, that I wanted to serve in this capacity. So.
I have another question from the chat. How do you use your law degree in your current job?
Yeah, so I use it in the sense of more of the analytical skills. The thing about, even though sometimes law school is not pleasant, it really makes you be a stronger critical thinker. And I see that sometimes in my role when I'm doing the policy stuff, because there's so many bills, so many ideas, and you look at a bill and you think about all of the different outcomes that could happen, or you're thinking about the politics of things, where things are sitting, because every bill could have a potential political consequence one way or the other. And so that law degree just made me a better analytical thinker in that way. And so, I think having the JD, whether you want to practice or not, you will gain a set of skills that I think won't leave you for a while if you use it correctly. And the law school definitely did that for me. Was made me a better analytical person, especially doing policy.
And do you think, do you find that a law degree is necessary to be able to have a role in government?
No, not at all. And you probably have talked with the legislators. I mean, many legislators are not lawyers. They are fishermen, fisherwomen, they're retired cops, they are, self-employed, they maybe are lawyers, but for this particular role, no. I think it's mainly about, having, obviously the education is helpful, but do you have the talent and do you have the passion? Because sometimes this job is not always pleasant. And when I say that, it's because I work in a political building. So there's politics, there's things being said that, some people take offense to, and you're thinking about all the consequences of policy because you want to make the right decision, obviously for your constituents. And so, no, going to law school is not a requirement, but it certainly will make you sharper at what you do if you use it correctly, the tools that you were given correctly.
Why did you decide to pursue the political side instead of the agency side of government?
Yeah, very good question. So I think for me, policy is a way I think you can really make a big difference. And it's messy sometimes, and it makes you think, and it's like academic in a way. And I feel like, all of the things that come with making policy, there's a lot of hurdles and a lot of successes. And I just feel like I'm more naturally fit to work in the legislative branch because strategy, policy, the political things to think about. And in an agency, I have a greater understanding actually in this job about what agencies do. And sometimes I feel bad about how many bills that go through this place and agencies have to put these things together. But I haven't foreclosed the thought of working in an agency, but I just feel like I'm more naturally fit to work in the legislature. It has a natural fit for me.
And in the part of your job that is policy work that you mentioned, the first third, do you get to choose those issues that you work on, or were they assigned to you?
Yeah, so when I first got here in 2019, I think whoever had my job, I just carried their policy committees on, and ironically, they were good committees anyway. When I started with Brian, it was the same way, but I think, I don't know what factors go into the speaker and the chief of staff picking who would be serving on these committees. But no, choosing a committee, I feel like it's out of my hands, and I almost feel like I don't want to ask, because I feel like I just want to serve in whatever capacity that's given to me, and hopefully it's one that will make my job better, the person I'm serving is better, and the policy better. So yeah, you kind of don't get a choice, but I kind of don't want to ask either. I'd rather just it be a surprise. So
that's a great way to learn about issues that you don't necessarily have a background in.
Yeah.
Expand your horizons.
Yeah, the last legislature, I had 4 legislative committees, now I have 5. I had no idea about inland fisheries and wildlife issues before I got that committee assignment. But this job and that surprise made me expand my mind more to say, okay, I'm covering inland fisheries and wildlife. How can I be a good policy staffer in this area and keep track of bills? So yeah, definitely good.
I have another question here. This from Drew. I'm navigating 2L OCI right now. I don't,
Mm.
you probably know what that means. I don't.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you feel as though your summer internships during law school formed a straight line to your current role, or whether they were more exploratory.
No, so I was fortunate enough. I did go through OCI. I wasn't successful in that, like getting that particular, I forget what it was actually. But I did do a fellowship that summer anyway, and I ended up working for as a legal intern, the ACLU, and so a lot of those issues dealt with civil rights and civil liberties, and part of my job assignment was to track rulemaking. Oh, and that's Heather. I think she's I think she's here. Tracking rules that came from various state agencies. So yeah, I do feel like my internships prepared me, or at least gave me those skill sets to be where I am now. And it's always good to see folks who you've worked with before. So it's not always not always an awkward introduction, like you know them already. So because there's a lot of people you meet up here that you haven't met. So
great. Thank you, Reggie.
yeah.
Heather,
Yeah.
are you fully with us?
I am so sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
The IT was here. They had to deinstall and reinstall, and so I apologize.
Well, that's okay. It worked. You're here.
Yes.
So with our Reggie's been telling us about his position and some of the work he deals with and how he got there.
Okay.
So I wonder if I know you're sort of not settled quite yet, but I wonder if you're ready to give us a little background on what your job is and how you got there and what some of the issues are that you deal with. We were talking a little bit about a couple of weeks ago, we spoke with some state legislators and we kind of learned about their role and how their jobs work. And so legislative staff is a different avenue. And right. So maybe you could address that and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay. So thank you first, and welcome everybody. This internship program is a wonderful opportunity. Been able to speak a few times over the years to different groups of students who participated, and it's a great jumpstart to a career in government if that's what you choose to do. So I have been at the State House about 27 years, and I've in the legislature. Had run the gamut of all the jobs here. I think started out at the front desk when my kids were little, and I actually started out in a session only position. So I worked from January to June, and then the following year I came back and started full-time year-round and have been here ever since. I started at the front desk, went to legislative aide, senior legislative aide, chief of staff, and then I don't know if Reggie talked about the minority and majority aspect of things, but I was fortunate enough to serve as clerk of the House of Representatives when I worked down in the House, and that is a position that's elected by the body, and I don't think it's ever not been I don't want to say it's not a partisan position, but you are elected. Basically, it's who's ever in the majority. But it is, again, I want to stress, it's a nonpartisan position. You work for everybody. You work for the chamber that you're in. Basically, you are chief parliamentarian and administrator of that end of the hall, so to speak. And then, so I was clerk for 2 years, and then after that, I was asked to come down to the Senate end of the hall and served as chief of staff for 2 years, and then was fortunate enough to serve as secretary of the Senate for 4 years, which is basically the same position as the clerk, it's parallel, just a different chamber. And then I'm now chief of staff in the Senate Republican office. So it's certainly been a wonderful opportunity over the last near 3 decades, and I truly love coming to work here at the State House. And you learn so much from every corner pocket of the state where you know somebody everywhere, and you learn about the different. We really have varied communities in how people live and use different resources around Maine. I don't know if that really makes sense, but you know, you look at Portland and then you look at TR 212 up in Penobscot or Aroostook County, and people live so differently. But it's so interesting to hear how people make a living and raise their families, and how what we do here impacts them, and what is good for one area of the state may not be good for another area of the state. So my job right now as chief of staff is basically to assist all the members of our caucus and leadership and the staff that we have here. I've always called ourselves a team. None of us, we're all on the same level, I think, and we all pitch in with everything, whether it's stuffing envelopes or going to meetings or doing research or crafting policy. Yeah, I think everybody here at the State House values their position here, and I think that if you are interested in an opportunity to work for state government, it's a great career, or as I said, a jumpstart to something else, whether it's nonprofit or anything. So,
what are some of the specifics of how your job works? You said you'd work with everybody. Do you work with all the legislators, or do you have certain policy issues that you deal with, or certain committees? How does that work?
I think every office tackles that differently. So as right now we're in the minority, we don't have as many staff members, so we aren't able to do as much as another office may be able to cover. So no, right now we do not, quote, staff committees. We absolutely help our members. So each member of our staff is assigned a certain amount of senators in the Republican caucus, and they will assist them with what they need on their own committees, whether it's Inland Fisheries and Wildlife or the Appropriations Committee. And you know, I try to help all of them, and we all overlap. We just do the best we can with helping everybody, because, for example, the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee has a lot of the same issues as, say, the Agricultural Committee. So our duties mesh sometimes, but we all do help each other out. So like I said, we're not assigned to specific committees or policy areas. And that's just an office decision. Everybody does it differently, depending on how many staff members they have or how the leaders want to do it, basically. So.
And if you're chief of staff, does that mean you take a request or a need and figure out who among your staff is the appropriate person? Is that part of your role?
Sure. Lots of times, if an inquiry comes in, we basically give it to the member of staff who, say somebody calls from Dedham. That would be Senator Rosen, and I happen to work with her, so I would take that. If somebody calls from Albion, that's Senator Searway, and so I would give it to that staff member who assists with him. That's how we kind of parse the work out. But if it's a policy area, I mean, we kind of all collaborate together. for the most part, and help out that way.
Okay, I have students writing in questions in the chat, so I'm going to read this one.
Sure.
In your position, did you find it easy to shift to remote work, or is government work best with in-person work?
I actually did not prefer remote work. It was a personal thing with me. I think for the members as well, I think it was very difficult. Personally, I don't, if you're asking for my opinion, I'm gonna offer it. And I think it was very difficult for members to, I mean, before we even came to the State House, Reggie, I don't even know, a couple weeks ago, time has just, when we first came to the chambers, there were members who had never even met each other.
Yeah.
And now we're continuing to have remote committee meetings, although there aren't many committee meetings, but we're continuing to have remote committee meetings because they've never been here to have a committee meeting. So we would need to go through training for them to do that, sitting around what we call the horseshoe, which is it's kind of a horseshoe shaped table for the committee members. They've probably not met their committee clerk in person. There are just different rules and policies on how to conduct a committee meeting in person and what you can and can't do in a committee room. So hopefully when we return in January, they'll come back and everything will go back to how we did it before. But the fact that they weren't able to, you know, let's step out in the hallway and talk about this, or take a 5-minute break and so we can discuss this as a caucus, or let me go ask this person. I just think it was a lot more difficult for folks to really collaborate as we have in the past. And I think many people might agree that when you're behind a computer, it's, I don't know, it's just, I don't think it was best for everybody. That's my opinion.
Thanks. I have another question here. How easy is it to move up within the staff at the State House? Have you thought about moving? Have you thought about moving to the federal level or working for a federal official?
I've actually never thought about that. I do really enjoy coming here every day. I think it's a privilege and it's an honor to be here. And I think moving up through the legislative staff, there are a handful of folks who've been here for many years, and I think that's a testament, of course, to the individual. But when you come to work for the legislature, you have to bear in mind that you have a job. If you do your job well, you have a job for 2 years, and that's it. Because there's an election every 2 years, the members change, the leadership changes, and you just have to accept that. But if you build relationships and do your job, hopefully the members will realize it's to their benefit to keep people who know not only the building, but the rules, the policy, just the institution itself. That's so important to maintain. And members who are not here for long periods of time, it's very helpful to have staff that has that institutional memory and knows what's happened in the past. And not to say what's happened in the past is good or bad, but you learn from that and how to move forward in the best, most efficient way. I hope that helps.
So many people, I mean, there is that shift every couple of years, but many people, staffers, people like yourself, it sounds like you have shifted a number of times, but you know, you stay you stay there
Yeah.
because you have that continuity. So
Yeah.
is that more common than people who say they're hired and they stay 2 years and then they don't have a job?
I think it's probably more common for people to be able to stay. I think a lot of people don't stay because of that unknown every 2 years. If they are thinking, oh gosh, we've got an election in 5 or 6 months, I better be prepared, I better start looking. And I choose not to do that. Yeah, I hope to stay on year after year, but you just prepare yourself. And I think for the most part, people, I'm trying to think in my mind, we have had a lot of turnover the last few years, but and I think that's probably due to the shifts we've had, going from Republican to Democrat to split chambers and then to Democrat. So there has been a lot of change. So, and then of course with the change in the governor, that opens up a lot of other positions, not certainly in the legislative branch, but people shift that way as well.
Okay, thanks. I'm gonna ask interns if they have any more questions. And in the meantime, I'm gonna ask you if you can tell us sort of what your best and worst parts of your job are. What's your favorite aspect of it? Does it anything that stands out as an element that you really enjoy, and something that's maybe on the more tedious side?
Did Reggie already answer this?
No, I was going to ask him next.
No, but I want to hear Heather first, because I feel like we might have the same, but it's probably going to be different. But yeah.
I think the and this is going to sound odd coming from what my position is, but I hate the politics. It really has become polarized, and in my job, yes, we deal with that, but we here in this office, we work on policy, we work on crafting legislation, we help the members, and constituent services is a big part of our job, helping everybody around the state. So the politics of it is not my favorite part at all. And one of the best aspects kind of goes along with that. It is helping people. I've gotten a couple calls this morning dealing with unemployment, folks who can't get through to unemployment and trying to get their benefits straightened out, or folks who have a case with DHS. It could be anything. It's helping people, and of course, getting to know folks from all over the state is pretty cool.
Should we ask Reggie the same question now?
Yeah. Now, no, I wanted to hear from Heather's perspective, because I know that, being in the state house for so long, I bet and my framework has only been in the last 2 years. So, and I would have definitely agree with Heather. I think the politics of things have gotten, I don't know if I'm choppy or not. All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're okay.
Okay. Yeah, I cut my camera off. I would definitely have to agree with Heather about the politics. And I think especially working in this building, you kind of sense the politics on a deeper level that I think many members of the public don't maybe get or understand sometimes. And I think in just the day-to-day policy work and following so many committees, there's sometimes some tough votes that are taken. And sometimes it's party line split. Sometimes there's party line split between Democrats or Republicans, like they can't agree on the committee. And sometimes that leads to some fracture reports to try to get through a legislature and figure out which direction to go. I would say that's probably the toughest part. The really the best part is really feeling like you're having an impact on constituents, even when they don't call about politics per se, but they're calling about needing help with a state agency. And you feel like you have at least led them to the path to get an answer. So that I would say is the best and worst part.
Okay, I have 2 more questions here, and then we're going to wrap it up. So let's see. Ryan says, if I understand correctly, the state legislative staffers work for multiple members or senators. How important is it for someone to work with senators or members with whom they share similar political positions within the party? And I guess either of you could answer that.
Well, if I understand it correctly, if you work in the legislature and you're of a particular party, you would work either for the Democrats or the Republicans, or the independents have a staffer as well. So I think it probably is important that you would work for what you are most aligned with. Is that the question? Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I would. I'm just gonna cut my camera off again just in case. I agree with Heather. I think at least for me, or I guess maybe not for me per se, but you in this political environment, you want to work for, especially in the legislative branch, if you feel like you can work with diverse people in their politics, that's great. But, I've always been of the model, if you want to work for a particular party that aligns with your values, as Heather said, or policy decisions that you agree with, I think it's easier to do that, because you never want to be caught in an awkward situation where maybe your boss makes a decision or supports a policy that you internally are conflicted about or you disagree with. And I imagine it happens even if you work on the same party and same team. But I feel like if your values align different than what the political party might be, it might be a little difficult. So it's always best to answer a lot of questions like internally about yourself and what you're willing to really put up with, to put it that way. So.
Okay, great. And this is, thank you. This is a final question, which is a perfect question to end on for both of you. What's your best piece of advice on how to get started in government? What advice would you give to, say, these interns, some of whom might want to look towards a career in government?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the internship is a great start. If you want to get into the legislative side of things, maybe get in touch with your local representative or senator and speak with them and find out if, get their take on working in the legislature. I think that if you are already expressing an interest in government as you are, it really is a great career to be working in the legislature. It's a great opportunity, and to think about it, not many people do work over here. So if you have the opportunity, I would say jump on it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I would definitely say that, if you want to work in government, I think don't waste a lot of time. And I'm not saying don't explore other things, but if you want to work in government, pursue that, with persistence and connecting with the right people. And, there's so many things you can do in government. And I think that can definitely open your eyes up to what you like and what you don't like. I know some of you are in agencies right now, and maybe some of you want to do that as a career, which would be great. If you want to try the legislative process, I'm sure there's a way to get through it. I know we don't have the structure that every representative has their own aide per se. which I think would be a great opportunity if that system was set up that way. But yeah, and don't give up, especially if things kind of take forever, because I know government sometimes works slow. So you might not get an answer back from folks for a while, but that doesn't mean that they don't value you. It's just they got so much on their plate that you might have to reach out to them, whoever that might be. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we've run over our time just a little bit here, and I apologize for that, because I know interns probably need to go eat lunch or take a break before you head back to work. And you guys do too as well, Heather and Reggie, I'm sure. So thank you so much, Reggie and Heather. We really appreciate you taking the time out to join us today and give us a little insight into your jobs and your your duties there and your background. It's I think that's a very helpful process for people to explore careers and find out how it really works behind the scenes. So really appreciate your time.
I'll say that we're in session on the 19th. If anybody can come over, you can experience it firsthand.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
You see all the craziness that happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. I actually might share that with all the interns.
Yeah.
See if anybody is available to do that.
Scheduled to go in at 10, should be in by noon.
Okay, we'll make a note of it. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good afternoon,
Sure.
and we'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All
Bye-bye.
right.